to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guests. I got to tell you something, people. The gentleman on my show today, well, every once in a while on Facebook, I'll post, if I win the lottery, what will happen? And I always post, I will get people Fieros. And the reason is, back in 1986, when I graduated college, I had a metallic maroon Fiero, and I loved the car. But for some reason, this gentleman, my guest, always responds. He wants, I believe, a Mazda RX-7, and my guest is Matt Servitto. And did you have a Mazda RX-7, or what's the fascination with the Mazda RX-7?
So a buddy of mine had one. We used to drive around in it and think we were very cool. I grew up in Detroit, where car culture is right next to God and Motown. So everybody had very strong opinions about cars. Everybody had a lot of amazing cars. A lot of my friends' families worked for the car company, so sometimes they'd get stuff early off the line before the rest of America had even seen it. So very opinionated about cars.
That's good. But the Fiero was pretty good. I tell you, that was the one thing I loved. It was like, I look at it now, and my aunt would tell people she worked with that her nephew Steven owned a Ferrari. So I picked these girls up on a date, and they'd be like, "What the hell is this? It's like a sardine can with wheels." And I'm like, "What?" And then my Aunt Ruth finally said, "Oh, I think I screwed up. I told him a Ferrari."
Yeah. I remember when my cousin had a Mazda Miata, and I was, talk about a death trap. I mean, you wouldn't even have to worry about the trucks because you could go under them in that car,
So I want to talk
thanks for having me on. Happy New Year, all that good stuff.
So I want to talk to you about, you're a great actor. You've had a great career. And I want to ask you, because I've talked to a lot of actors like you who've been around for a long time. Self-tape versus the room for auditions. What do you prefer and why?
You don't have enough time in this podcast. Or I can answer it very simply. Self-tape, I think is, this is going to sound terrible. It's for cowards. People, I feel like we're creating a generation of actors, and I've met some of them, many of them. They're absolutely terrified of a room of people. And I'm like, but you're an actor. That's part of what we always wanted as an actor was an audience. Many of the new ones don't want an audience because they can sit in their room, kind of what I would probably say do, acting masturbation on it with a camera, and kind of like, and be obsessed with their own performance. Many of us spent most of our time never watching our own work. Now you've got to watch it incessantly over and over and over again, which is part of the business model I was never expecting. You don't have the luxury of not watching yourself. And it's in some ways, Steve, there's definitely some auditions I've done that were better because they were self-taped. For sure. Because I sit there and think like, man, that fifth take that I wasn't going to do, I did, and I think I finally kind of found something in that fifth take. I do like it because it gives you more to do. There's less auditions, but the self-tape takes a little bit longer than walking in an office for a minute and a half and walking out. What I used to do was a ton of prep. I'd generally be off book. I'm rarely off book now. I mostly just use a teleprompter or a reader holding up the sides. So it creates a little bit of a laziness. I liked getting off book. I liked creating a performance. But I'm old-timer. I worked more in the room. I think actors had to have personality. Actors had to be able to think on their feet. There was improv in the room. There was direction. You had to be able to take direction. Now we get no direction. You're kind of guessing at what they might want. All of that leads me to say, and it's also, I'm a people person. I tried writing. I tried being a musician. No, I'm an actor because I like to collaborate. I like other human beings. And self-tape is just one more step away from all of us being together and working as a group to tell a story.
Well, it's funny. You said that you never expected the industry to go this way. You're a Juilliard guy. So I'm guessing for that, back then, like you guys, they never teach you how to get out and get an agent. They teach you the craft. So back then, first of all, what made you get into acting? What made you follow this career? And I always wonder, different people have different stories. But you went to acting school. What were you like as a kid? Were you an athlete, or you just were an actor, or what?
Yeah, it is. There's nothing, I'm not one of those, like, all the attention's got to be on me guy. I always had a wicked sense of humor because my family does. Funny. In fact, it was my grandparents, both my grandmother on my mother's side, my dad's dad who came from Italy. Very funny people, bigger than life. I love their company. I love their friends. But yeah, I was just a typical Detroit kid, Midwestern, middle class family on the east side of the city of Detroit, and just loved kind of my neighborhood, my friends, hanging out, riding bikes. Huge sports fan, all the Detroit teams. But yeah, I was in high school. I had just finished my freshman year football, so it's now like November, December, and didn't have any plans for the rest of the year other than maybe trying to meet some girls. And lo and behold, the casting went up for one of the only plays or musicals I know, which is West Side Story. And I knew it because my dad loved the movie. Whenever, back then, I'm sure you remember, Steve, movies would come on once a year. Wizard of Oz, once a year. West Side Story, once. Whole family gathers around the TV, popcorn, we watch it, because you're not going to see it again for a year or 5 years. You have no idea. But we always watch it. My dad had the soundtrack. So I came home, I said to my dad, did you know West Side Story's a play? My dad was like, well, yeah, it was a Broadway show before the movie. I said, well, I only know the movie. He goes, well, you should audition. You know all the music. And I was like, I don't know. I've got all these football guys behind me like, oh, yeah, go ahead. And as I said, I was desperate to sort of meet some girls. All these girls were auditioning, so I'm like, all right. And let me tell you, Steve, that's why I'm sitting here. I got in it to meet girls. I'm still in it to meet girls. Unfortunately, I'm talking to you today.
Yeah, well, it's all right.
But yeah, man, I absolutely never look back. I fell in love with musicals. That's what I fell in love with. So really, musicals are why I'm sitting here. It's painful that I took a sharp left when I went to Juilliard and went straight head on into serious drama. But I love musicals to this day. My kids love musicals. We go to Broadway shows. We listen to soundtracks. I have so many friends that hate musicals that are actors. I can't get enough of them. Love them.
Well, so why'd you pick Juilliard? I mean, you're a kid from Detroit. I mean, first of all, it must be scary. I mean, I grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and New York wasn't that far, so we go into Philly. But that was close. That was, that was easy. When I started doing stand-up comedy, we jump into Philly sometimes. But, I mean, to New York. But for you, I mean, why did you decide on Juilliard? And was it sort of terrifying because you're a kid from Detroit?
Yeah, like none of that really changed. I mean, I went through 4 years of musicals at high school. I literally looked at the military. I looked at going to college to study journalism, political science. I was heavy into politics at that point in the 70s, early 80s. And my drama director, instructor said, I think I could get you a theater scholarship to the local college, Wayne State University, downtown Detroit, big commuter college. He says, they have a great theater department. I think I can get you a scholarship. Let's work on it, some monologues. So I'm like, I guess, I don't know. Let's give it a shot, but, we'll see what happens. I'll be damned. I auditioned. He worked with me. I got in. So I figured I'd use the theater scholarship again, journalism, maybe English major. But the idea, as you said, Steve, of becoming an actor, like a New York actor, just still wasn't in the cards because I didn't think I was still thinking musicals. I probably don't have the talent, but I'm not running off to L.A. So I'm just going to use this theater scholarship for ulterior motives. And after about a year there, I was having a great time, doing very well. I got a settlement in a car accident. So I always say I'm sitting here really because of a car accident. I was in a head-on collision, and we got some pain and suffering money, $18,500. In 1983 dollars, that was 18. So in these days, that's probably about $90,000, and that was a shit ton of money. I mean, I think my dad made $50K a year at that point. So I decided to go spend a semester abroad in England and study theater. And I went through Yale School of Drama. I went to Oxford to the British American Drama Academy. And there was a bunch of students from Yale School of Drama, Juilliard, NYU, SMU, ACT, all of these major theater programs, all older than me. I think I was the youngest one in the program. And I got an earful all summer, like, you've got to get to one of these elite schools. You're going to die out there in the Midwest. Not that you might not become an actor, but you'll fast track it if you can get in one of these schools. So I came back just between my freshman and sophomore year and immediately auditioned for Juilliard, North Carolina School of the Arts. I think it was just those two. Because the other programs, NYU, it's the grad program that's really special. Yale, it's the grad program that's really special. So I figured I don't want to do 3 more years and then start over. I'll try one of these schools that will take an undergrad. So auditioned in Chicago, was rejected, got put on a wait list, so I was waitlisted and eventually got in to Juilliard. And I didn't even know Juilliard, to your point, Steve, from Detroit, but the names, all of the elite school names got put in my head, and those are the ones that stuck. And I just went for broke. I figured if I don't get in, maybe I'll just quit this whole acting thing. I'll just go for the top and see what happens. Because as I said, I don't think I would have waited tables in LA for 10 years. I just figured go to the top, see what happens, and if you can get there, great. If you can't, I was still very, much in flux.
Now, who were some of your classmates at Juilliard?
I was there at a great time. This is sort of mid-'80s. So just before me was Brad Whitford, who I met. He came back and saw plays when we were there. We got to hang out over a few years. In my class was Bill Camp. Bill works all the time. Jane Addams, Lisa Gay Hamilton, John Benjamin Hickey. The class behind me was Laura Linney, Jean Triplehorn. I'm trying to think. Tim Blake Nelson was behind them. Just a really amazing group of writers, actors, artists. I mean, I felt very lucky because I felt within a few years after and the regime changed, we were the last class that sort of, one of the last classes that had some of the original teachers at Juilliard, founded in the late 60s at Lincoln Center. Many of them, the teachers were getting older at that point, moving on, retiring. So we were the last ones that had what I used to call the ruler slappers. I mean, like they truly were like the nuns in Catholic school. They beat the crap out of you, told you sucked, and then would put you back together and push you out the door at Juilliard. And a lot of people didn't survive, didn't mentally survive. So yeah, I mean, and I'm not even thinking of all the names, but there was many good people right before me, many great people right after, and then all of a sudden I'm out for a while and I start seeing people like Jessica Chastain, Adam Driver. I have no idea these are all Juilliard. Juilliard just has an incredible ability to spot talent, and their auditioning process now super rigorous.
So you graduate. Now what do? You hit the you have a theater degree, Juilliard, great school,
Yep.
But you're in New York. Where do you start? Because once again, I've talked to many actors. I had an agent when I was in LA, but I also have a business background, so I know how to talk to people. When you're an actor, they don't tell you, here's how you get an agent, here's how you put a press kit. And back then it was different. Like I was telling someone, when I was touring doing comedy on the road, we had to send a videotape. Like it wasn't like now someone could just send a clip. We had to get a tape, we had to put it in an envelope, we had to put a headshot in, we had to mail it. So if it was like $10 a pop, and if you weren't getting any response, you got pissed. But but it's changed. But for you, how did you start going about getting work?
By the way, I just was cleaning up my basement a little week between Christmas and New Year's. Nothing's happening, so I decided to clean up my bed. I have got to get some of that VHS digitally transferred because there's tons of gold down in my basement that I'm like, plays, improv stuff, commercials I did, me starring on the first Law and Order. I must look like I'm 12. Anyways, the thing is, that's why when I talk to students, Steve, I say I can't use my own story to give you hope or to distract you, because I feel like what happened with me is not how it works. My wife waited tables for 7 years. She went to Syracuse for musical theater, got out, went to all those early open calls at 6 a.m, freezing cold Broadway theaters. You get to sing your 16 bars and go, a little bit of dance steps and go home. Before I even graduated Juilliard, had an agent. They used to come looking for us. So the agents would come to Juilliard. By our third year, they were public performances. So the agents would show up, sign whoever they wanted to grab. Over half my classmates had agents before we even graduated. I was in my senior year, spring semester, and the casting director for All My Children, which was shooting right across the street. We were at 66th and Broadway. They were at 67th in Columbus. She comes to see a show, calls me in, signs me to a 2-year contract on All My Children. So I spent the last month of school shooting the soap and running back to do plays at night at Juilliard. So I kind of got my feet wet. I got going right away in daytime television. People have many feelings about daytime TV, but what it was basically supported the arts in New York City because everybody was able to get some sort of gig on all of the soaps that shot here. LA had all the nighttime TV. We had most of the daytime, and it was a place for us to cut our teeth, learn. It was a camera class, Steve. I had no camera training at Juilliard, none. Now that I'm sure they have a camera class, you cannot offer acting students these days because they're going to spend all their life in front of a camera. Back then it was theater, theater, theater. You'll figure out camera once you get out. And I don't disagree. I did. But soaps were great. So I then spent 5 years in and out of 3 different soap operas, doing a little bit of theater in New York City off Broadway, but really getting frustrated because, as you know and remember, it's a very specific style, soap operas. I mean, the material comes fast and furious. It's quantity over quality in regards to we'd shoot an entire episode every day. Let's keep it moving. And I found myself just falling into bad habits, immediately, like not memorizing all my lines, not really caring in certain scenes. Tons of exposition. How do you act exposition, But the good thing was I made me very unprecious about my work. It was a job. I took a lot of pride in what I did, but I knew I had to move on. So after a few years of soaps, I said to my agent, all right, I'm going to do regional theater. I'm going to do indie film. I've got to kind of get my chops back. So I did, and I went broke. So,
yeah, well, I was going to ask you also, as a young guy, I tell some young comics this, first time I was on stage, I had a great set. And I thought, I'm the best. I should be headlining. And then next time I ate shit and I disappeared for a month. For you, when you get a job that easily, because like you said, actors, when you tell them their path isn't the same as yours, you basically had an easy, it came easy to you to start. How do you adjust to that mentally? Because you sit there, you're young, you get this role. Do you think that I'm going to nail every audition? And then what happens when you don't after having, after getting acting a gig right after your first, before you're out of school?
No, I never. You know what it is? I just never. I think I always the acting thing, as I call it. People when did you decide you want to become an actor? I'm like, I still haven't decided. I'm still on the fence. 35, 40 years in. Because I said, I'm a kid from Detroit, man. I fully always expected to work a regular manual labor job or at least a low-level white-collar job. I never had visions of this. So every damn day, Steve, since 1983, has all been a dream because I just never expected to be able to kind of do this. I definitely thought, all right, I might have a chance when I got into Juilliard, but every job as you know, Steve, can be your last. And I never was cocky. I went to school with some amazing actors that I felt were so much better than me that I was trying to keep up with their talent level. When I'm in certain scenes with them doing Shakespeare, Chekhov, Arthur Miller, I'm just like, God, these guys are amazing. So I always knew I had to work on my craft, but I never got cocky because, you were surrounded always, especially in New York. I think it's what helped. You were constantly surrounded by struggling actors and your friends, and they keep you humble. The minute I got that first check on all my children, I took all my classmates out for a big Mexican dinner. That's just kind of and I saw them immediately up, down. We had one friend who actually, his star really went fast in L.A. And then when you come down in L.A., man, you come hard. You come down hard because it is, you start living in the heady world of movie stars and parties on Malibu and red carpets. And New York just doesn't, it's the reason I'm still here. It kind of always kept me humble. But as I said, if the work took me to LA, make no mistake, I am there. I stayed for 25 years and I'm a movie star or a TV star. But no, man, I never got cocky about anything because really, I think I was in it for the long haul. I actually had friends, and this is interesting, that I'm sure you have an opinion, same thing with comics. I had friends that their goal was to be a movie star, which I thought was a really weird goal. I was like, wait a minute, you don't mean like an actor, like a working actor. You mean a movie star. No. I want to be Tom Cruise.
It's funny you say that because we used to do in Philly where I started doing comedy, we were comics. That's what we did. And the funny thing is, Adam McKay, who's an award-winning director, was one of the guys I used to hang out with. We used to drink after shows. But if you walked in and you said, oh, I'm doing comedy to get a sitcom, we'd be like, fuck you. We're comics. We were comics first. That's what we were there for. And we're like, if you want to do that, go to New York or go to L.A. But if they did that in New York, they tell people go get out of here too. But it's funny you say that. It is weird. Some people look at it differently, and some people, and I see that with podcasting. There's some people who do it. They want to be a YouTube star. I'm like, no, man. I've done over 1,000 episodes of this show. You gotta cut your chops. They go, well, how'd you get that guest? I said, because I've been around. But some people just want that instantaneous pop.
that is definitely a thing that you've seen in the comedy world. That because I had a friend that ran a comedy club in Detroit for years and years, and he saw that transition during the '90s. You know, when all of a sudden when Seinfeld broke, it's like all of a sudden every comic, every stand-up wanted his own or her own sitcom, and he said it's ruining comedy. He said because these people come in here and they're just trying to all be telegenic, you know, look beautiful, have their comedy, take the edge off their comedy, kind of do stuff that could be on NBC on a Thursday night at 8:30, and that whole phenomenon. I mean, now it's kind of de rigueur. I think you know the whole world of improv and the internet changed everything. Because what do? We consume now mostly through little clips. So you can consume tons of stand-up, tons of sketch, lots of improv in a very short amount of time. But yeah, that phenomenon, like for about 10 years, where everybody that was like a really good stand-up all of a sudden and they were getting deals. They were getting deals.
I have friends, a lot of friends who got deals. Yeah, some never got shows, but they had that money.
I'm sure you remember my good friend Greg Giraldo, God rest his soul.
He was,
you know, Greg had it developed. I went to see all of the tapings of his show. One was worse than the next. Greg wasn't an actor, never pretended to be. He was a great stand-up, an incredibly caustic, great stand-up whose comedy just did not translate to network TV. And I'm like, nor should it. Right. I mean, he was just one of these guys, and a lot of the kids know him from the roasts, but he was just fantastic. And I just watched him struggle with this 3, show deal over at CBS. I'm like, oh, this isn't you, bro.
It isn't. So you're broke when you're doing theater and you're working. How long until you get The Sopranos during that time? And were you doing, as you said, Law and Order? I mean, there was shows in New York, Third Watch, Law and Order. There was different shows. But what was your way to getting The Sopranos? Because that sort of, even though you were a working actor, it shows like that put people on the map that actually puts a game plan where they know they have all of a sudden they have juice.
Yeah, it was that show came. So like I said, I come out at 89, 88, my first job at 89. Seriously, soaps, a little bit of TV work, but then there is that middle of the 90s where I just decided I'm going to struggle. I did regional theater. I did a lot in Philadelphia actually. And did indie films for no money and changing clothes in the back of a car, like shooting outside, freezing cold. And yeah, I'm broke, and beyond broke. I think I was majorly in debt, and did even what little money I had. We made a film with a friend. That, this is back when you could do it with the credit card stuff. And right around that time in the late 90s, I booked this. I auditioned initially for the pilot of Sopranos for Father Phil, for the priest, and didn't get it. I wasn't sure what the show was. I'm like, Sopranos, singers, what are we talking about here? Yeah, I realize it's a mob show, okay, but I don't get it. A year goes by, they do the pilot, it gets picked up, they're bringing me in, and I'm like, Sopranos, oh God, that's that show, yeah, play an FBI agent. They're already started shooting, they're on about episode 5 or 6, and they come in, meet David Chase. I'd never gotten that far with Father Phil. So here I am now with producers, director, everything. I read one FBI agent, and David Chase said, hey, man, nice work, really, really great. Could you flip around, come back tomorrow, and I'm going to give you different sides for a different FBI agent. I'm like, cool. So that was Agent Harris. I was going in for Detective Grasso, FBI Agent Grasso, very Italian, and they ended up casting my friend Frank, who totally looks the part, great. Harris had to look a little bit more Irish, generic, waspy. And he had me come back the next day. I book it. It's one episode, 2 scenes. And that's it. And I 2 weeks go by. I shoot the scenes, go home. Another week, 2 weeks go by. Hey, they want to bring you back for another episode of that Sopranos thing. I'm like, oh, cool. Okay. Another week goes by. Hey, they want to bring you back for a third episode. It's all in the first season. So I end up doing 3 episodes the first season. But again, make no mistake, I'm getting scale. I'm getting paid scale. But I'm feeling a movement, a change in the work for me. Like, it wasn't just Sopranos. I was booking other episodics and keeping busy on. New York started getting more television shows. HBO changed everything. All of a sudden, we had Sex in the City. We've got Sopranos. We've got Oz. We've got all these shows, And I remember going to the wrap party of season 1. I think it was a small little pizza place. And kind of hugging people, saying, that was cool. That was fun. See ya. Like, I don't think it's coming back. The reason is I love it. And I think America's not. Because everything I ever loved doesn't last. And things I hate get 8 seasons. and I'm like, this thing is maybe, I don't know if America's ready for like Goodfellas, the TV show. So I really did kind of think, well, that was that, and moved on. And I couldn't, I hear it gets picked up for a second season. I don't get called right away, but then I do. Bring me back for a few more. So it really, Steve, I never got comfortable on that show till around season 3 when Nancy Marchand died. Right before we started shooting, Tony's mother, the woman Nancy who played Tony's mom, passed away, and they were stuck because we were about to start shooting. So they went back to the drawing board and immediately wrote a big FBI story to start the season, just to give everyone some time to kind of get their sea legs and figure out what is The Sopranos without Livia? What is this show? Which, as David Chase always said, it's about a guy in therapy whose mother drives him crazy. Well, now we don't have the mom. And Nancy was a force. I mean, she was amazing as an actress, as a human being. So that episode was my Welcome to the Sopranos episode. That first episode of season 3 had my own little soundtrack of the Peter Gunn theme mixed with Sting, when we're trying to get the wire in the basement, the whole thing. So from then on, I knew that they were always going to have me coming back again and again. And then I got contracted probably in season 5 and got a full contract for the last 2 seasons. So, but yeah, at some point I knew it had changed the paradigm for me. The shift had happened because all of a sudden the show, which was, getting some recognition by season 2, it exploded. By season 3, I always say going out with that cast in New York was like being with the Rolling Stones in the late 60s.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. I interviewed Steven Van Zandt, and he said, when that show blew up, like, a lot of people didn't even know he played with Springsteen. They just knew him as Silvio. He'd be walking down the street and they'd be, "Oh, Silvio," and he's like, I play with Springsteen. And then the late Willie Garson had told me back when there was like Emmy parties, it was Sex and the City and the Sopranos, and he said they were all like rock stars, and he was always he was always afraid of, like, Springsteen was at one of them. He's afraid to talk to Springsteen because he's a big fan. But even though, but it's funny how that show really, it changed things because it was one of the first, and then you had The Shield came along, and even Breaking Bad. It was the first where the bad guy you liked. And I think, I just rewatched it a few months back because I had not seen it since it originally came out. And I forgot how amazing that James Gandolfino is that character. I mean, that is one of the best acting jobs that you can have. And I know people like Ray Abruzzo acted with him, and Paul Carafotis is an old friend of his, but they always just said he was such a talent. I mean, what was it like for you doing scenes with a guy, because you're going to get examined by the viewers, and thank God it was before the internet, because everyone's always like, I know this guitar wizard named Guthrie Govan, and people would sit there and they'd like watch him and be like post like, he played this chord wrong and stupid shit like that. But what was it like for you to be? I mean, because you're in the major leagues, man. Now, I mean, you worked, but now it's like you're on the top of the acting mountain. What was it like doing scenes with Gandolfini? I'm sure he was very giving, but was there any intimidation?
I'm going to back up real quick. Saw a great documentary on Steven Van Zandt available right now called Disciple. Steven Van Zandt. It's a great documentary for your listeners if they want to, viewers if they want to check that out. It's long but worth every frame. And then also, there was something else. About the internet. I thank God we did this show. We just avoided iPhones. The show ended in 2007. The iPhone came out in 2007. Social media blew up. Because all these shows now, the pressure, the connection with the audience through social media, some of it's better, but a lot of it, like you said, the opinions and all the little, this was the last probably old school, watch it every Sunday night, you can't binge it, etc. But going all the way to your point about Jimmy, no, because Jimmy was just Jimmy. I mean, listen, we're both guys from Jersey. I mean, it was, and I also, had worked, I mean, Jimmy's an amazing actor, but make no mistake, I worked with some amazing actors as well. I mean, Jimmy had some of the most raw talent I've ever seen. I mean, this is not a guy that studied acting a lot. He just had this menace, and he had this natural. He had 2 beautiful gears, big, soft puppy. The 2 gears he had were him. Very much in his DNA, which was this incredibly angry, menacing Italian guy. And then he had this puppy on the other side. And we all, mostly offset, always got the teddy bear. You see in the movie he did with Julie Louis-Dreyfus, Enough Said, I think
something
it's called.
Like that.
Yeah. That's Jimmy. It's like a guy in Birkenstocks, cutoffs, and a ripped T-shirt sitting talking to Julia in the backyard, being a nice neighbor. Like, it was so Jimmy, and then you begin to appreciate the performance. I always said when he died, the only thing, I mean, there were so many, awful things, but I said, I just wanted America to have more time with Jimmy the actor, and Jimmy the human being, but Jimmy the actor, so that they could realize every damn day what an amazing performance that was. Because his career would have been long and many more interesting little roles, little things that he would have taken on, projects. He had development deals, and he never wanted to make flashy things. He wanted very human stories. And I'm like, oh, God, because I just wanted another 10 years of him showing America that he's not Tony Soprano. He's James Gandolfini, and he's a great actor. But he was physically intimidating because he's big, so it's bear hugs. But on set, I talked a bit about this on Michael and Steve Sharippa's podcast. He wasn't always Mr. Fun Guy. Jimmy was hungover sometimes. Jimmy was fun. Jimmy would be hungry sometimes. Jimmy was sick of acting sometimes. And all of that's in the show. You'll see it. And so, yeah, there was days I came and it was fun, and then other days Jimmy's in his trailer and we're waiting, and Jimmy comes out. Some days, we'd be halfway through a scene, let's come back tomorrow, kind of thing. And it was all, listen, in the end, it's all great stories. Everybody goes on the podcast, tells all the stories. But in the end, I said, I've got better salacious stories from other shows. Sopranos was a work-a-day show, man. We all went to work. Everybody cared about the craft, cared about the story. We had lots of laughs, lots of food, lots of, after going into Little Italy after rap and having wine and food until 3 a.m. But on set, wasn't a lot of hijinks. There wasn't like, oh, she's sleeping with him or because it was predominantly male, predominantly New York, it really was. That's why I'm always fascinated by so many people talking about the show, because I'm like, and everybody's got their own different stories. And there were things that went on behind the scenes that you've heard. I'm sure some of the rumors and, people coming up to us that are connected that would say things to us, including me. I for years had tons of FBI agents, and I still do, that come up to me all the time. Guys that work for organized crime, guys that literally were trying to take down the New York mob. And what they always love is the authenticity. They said, what I like is you don't sensationalize the FBI. It's not cops and robbers. It's kind of boring. Look, I said 7 seasons, we didn't have one arrest stick. Right. Honestly, everybody we talked to got killed. Adriana got killed. Big Pussy got killed. Everybody went down. And we didn't, really, in the end, he said that stakeout scene when you're just sitting there, that's all we do. We sit there and drink coffee and check our phones, like hours, days of nothing, And so we had FBI consultants. David Chase had friends from the Bureau that kind of vetted a lot of the scripts. So that's what I always loved, is that as you know, I've done so many procedurals. That never felt like cops and robbers to me. And in the end, as you see, it was me and one of my favorite scenes, you're talking about being with Jimmy. I didn't have a lot of interaction until the last 2 seasons. And then one of my favorite scenes, people say, oh, what's your favorite scene? Me and Jimmy sitting in a car, me and Tony, sitting in a car at Teterboro Airport. It's really snowing, coming down hard. And he wants intel from me about Phil Leotardo. I want intel from him about terrorism. And we're kind of playing a little cat and mouse game. And my phone rings. My wife's yelling at me, telling me, don't do that. I'll leave the food out. You heat it up. You're working late again. I'm like, yeah, I gotta, Jesus, my wife. And Tony's like, it's like 2 Jersey guys, just like, I'm the mob guy, you're that. I said it always reminds me of the Looney Tunes, of the sheepdog and the Wile E. Coyote. They punch the clock, they chase each other all day, they come back, good night, John, good night, Jim, see you tomorrow. It felt like that for me. And so this scene with Jimmy, we sat in that car for hours in a snowstorm shooting this scene, but they're bringing us coffee. Everybody else is freezing outside the car, but, we just laughed, talked. It was probably the most time I spent with him in any scene. And we just got to kind of hang out. It's great.
Now, once the show's taken off, are you starting to get recognized? Because everyone, now, do people like you, or do they think you're trying to bust Tony? So you're like, oh, you're a prick. Like what? Because the thing is, people like, okay, Timothy Busfield said when he was such a jerk on 30 something, he said he was at Gilman's or whatever the big shopping store in Gelson's, and some lady walked up and smacked him because he was such a dick to his wife on the show, and he was like, it's not me, that's the thing. But for you, were people harangue you, or would they just bust your balls having fun?
Well, I always tell people the real change for me happened, and it had nothing to do with me, the writers, or the show. 9/11 changed the world, and it changed New York City forever. And that day, I think our writers went back to the writers' room and decided we've got to change. We've got to adapt to the new world order. Like, we can't ignore the change in the city, the change in the world. And they immediately shifted me from organized crime to anti-terrorism. And that changed everything. Because up to that point, the fans hated me. First 3-4 seasons, no use for me. And you're right, on the subway, literally like, leave Tony alone, you're a jerk. You know, da-da-da. People rolling down windows. I'm literally with my kids, and people like swearing at me, you know. And I'm like, it's a character, it's a TV show. But I'll tell you, with that show, I've never had fans feel more like it was real. It felt authentic, and it felt very real for them. But that shift in the writing, when I then go to anti-terrorism, and I need Tony, and he needs me, and I'm hanging out at the pork shop, drinking espresso, eating a sandwich, getting to be buddies with him, looking for intel from him, he's looking for, you know, and I start giving it to him. And the fans are like, oh, we loved your character. I'm like, did you? Not early. You did at the end. You did at the end, because really, by the end, I'm literally breaking, you know, my oath as an FBI agent and giving intel to the New Jersey mob so they can take down the New York mob. But yeah, they really changed, and it did, because the fans really, in the end, had this kind of a affinity for me, and a lot of it had to do even not just with the last season, but the last 2 episodes. I mean, I was right there till the end with Tony, trying to save his ass, but it helps. So that shift in the writing really, really changed everything for my character and for my time on the show and how people remember me.
Now, how are you taken when you go into a room? Are you getting offers? You're on a hit show? I mean, how is the industry viewing you? Because you are on the top of the mountain. So are they sitting there going, were you getting in rooms that you may not have gotten on? Were you getting offers? Yeah. Because back then, unfortunately, now no one gets offers. I mean, you can win 2 Oscars, you're not getting an offer. You're usually getting self-competition. Self-tape. But so how did it change? How did it change your trajectory of your career? Because you're doing great. And the second part of that is, did you ever sit there and worry that, you know, it can only go downhill with the writing? Like, you know, I mean, you'll get good shows, but all of a sudden you're an actor. You're going to take what work you're going to get. But all of a sudden you sit there, you're going from writing, you know, The Sopranos, you know, all these great writers, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're auditioning for some show where it's some, you know, a cop with a monkey. You know what I mean? It's like, not that, but what was it like? How did that?
Did you go up for that show too?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Did you
play the monkey?
Yeah, I was the monkey. How did it change your career?
It changed it in a number of ways. I'll tell you one of the things that I realized after the show was gone, because there was so many guys that came up to me like, damn it, I auditioned for that show like 3 times, man. I wanted to do The Sopranos, because it was like, I said, in a weird way, it was the acting equivalent of becoming a made man. You were on the show. I tell people, guys in my circle do not call it Sopranos. They call it the show. It's the show. You were on the show for years. The show. Oh, I tried to get on the show, man. It's just, you know what show we're all talking about. If you say the show, in my world, everybody knows what you're talking about. So it almost, like you said, you became a made actor in New York. You couldn't have any better street cred than that show. In fact, at one point I was renegotiating a contract, and I had to pass. I hate these moments. I'm sure you've had them. Where every once in a while, it's like the only way you're going to get a better contract is if you pass. And I'm like, oh, my manager's like, yeah, we got to pass. I'm like, I'm going to tell you right now, I may never do anything like Sopranos again. I want a bookend. I was there in the season 1. I want to be there till the end. If I have to lose money or take a hit on it, I don't care. That may be the feather in my cap. I said, there may never be another high watermark other than this show. So I said, do not blow this from me. He said, no. This is just the game we play. We're going to pass, but they're going to come back. I sweated that one out for a couple days, and they did. They came back, and they were incredibly generous, because it was at a time when everybody was up. Jimmy got a big bump. Everybody got a bump, and I got a bump as well. But I was terrified because, like you said, if nothing else, I'd always have Sopranos. And to this day, I feel that way. I mean, it's been almost 20 years since it's been off the air, 18 years. And every damn day I go, I did Sopranos. I mean, what am I going to do? Go out and try to find the next Sopranos? It's not going to happen. It's not going to exist. So I've done some great. I mean, I got to be on Billions for 6 seasons. I immediately went on to a show called Banshee for 4 years.
I got to ask you about Banshee. I used to actually one of the co-stars. Remember Gino Seegers?
Oh Jesus, of course.
He came to my Super Bowl party in Burbank one time, and it's so funny because my wife's very petite. Well, at the time, and this was 8-9 years ago, Gino's girlfriend was even more petite than my wife.
Oh yeah,
and Gino had like the deepest voice, and I met him at a bar, and when I first started the show, actually, Gino was on like one of the first 50 episodes, and I ran into him at a bar, Gordon Biersch in Burbank, and we were just talking, and he was an actor, and that's funny because I saw that you were on Banshee, and I know Gino was in that. But see,
oh yeah,
well, I was going to say, the one thing about you is, Brotherhood, Billions, Banshee, you've gotten the let's say the luxury of getting roles as a regular or recurring on shows that aren't network. And for an actor, that must be coming from the Sopranos. I mean, Law and Order is great. And, and you've been on a bunch of them. And me and my wife watch it on third. We watch 2 and 3 of them, whatever, when there's 3 on. And we love the show. But once again, there's sort of a restriction on what you can do. So it must be good for you as an actor that you've gotten these good gigs on cable, because it lets you really flex your muscle and sort of tries to stay close to the Sopranos.
Yeah, it was. I mean, in fact, that's a great point. I've brought that up. I mean, I've said I've sort of wallowed on premium cable. I mean, and it's what a great place to be at a time when premium cable was becoming the place to be. I mean, like everybody, movie stars all of a sudden wanted to do TV. All the best directors didn't want to do movies. They wanted to do premium cable shows. So I've gotten to work with just so many amazing directors over the years because of that explosive. Same way, I was talking about sensations that happen, stand-ups getting sitcoms. That narrative, that shift that happened with HBO and then with Showtime and all the other streamers that followed, I was just in the right place at the right time, staying in New York. Many of those shows shot in New York. And like you said, I was coming off this incredible show. So I was falling into one. I was on 2 recurring roles at once for years, and just kind of feasting off of.
Wait, the two recurring Sopranos and Brotherhood? No.
So after Sopranos, I got a recurring and then contracted on Brotherhood. I was recurring and then contracted on Billions, and then I was always for about 5 years running between New York and Atlanta doing this crazy ass comedy called Your Pretty Face Is Going to Hell on Adult Swim.
That's where you played the devil, right?
I played the devil, yeah. So, I mean, it just, like I said, really, Steve, there's been in the shift, as you were talking about. I mean, we could have a whole episode about the change in the business, but that's really like right up till around COVID, just before COVID. And then things have just changed, not just for me, but for everyone. The business has changed. And that robustness that seemed to be there, I think it'll come back. They're building how many new studios here? Building 2 new studios in Jersey, new one in New York. I figured, well, are those going to be empty? I mean, there's got to be more work coming. But to your point, it's been great that I got to be on shows where you could swear, where we could have sex scenes, where we could, because there was no. Then every once in a while I would job in on a network show and I'd forget. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, right, network, because I've occurred on NCIS New Orleans for a few seasons, and I used to laugh. I used to say to the director, CBS meant can't be subtle. I mean, you have to hit him over the head with the story, hit him over the head with the plot, and shows that just were so muscular but kept in there was an algorithm the way these procedural network shows work. And I read an article, must have been the Wall Street Journal, you can still put a procedural on air on a network and it sells. To this day, it is the most definite thing, is that put a procedural on a network, it'll still get a good rating, it can still sell ads. It's the only genre that still works. And so as much as I can't, I'm like, oh my God, who's watching all of these NCISs and CISIs, the this, the that, and they're out there.
My wife,
I'm on them. Those texts all come from Midwest. I've got a lot of family in the Midwest. Here come the texts. Saw you on NCIS. I'm like, nobody in the business, nobody in New York, nobody in LA, but like family back home, love it. Oh my God, you shot that guy, and I'm like, holy crap. Yeah, you got a huge audience out there for it.
Now, Banshee, what is it like for an actor when you're on all 38 episodes, You were the whole season. What is it? What mentally goes through an actor's head? Because once you get past one season, you start getting close to the cast and the crew and the AD and the crafty person. And so, what is it? In The Sopranos, you were recurring, except in the last. So we weren't there the whole time, so you knew the people, but it wasn't like you saw them every day. Banshee, you see them every day. Mentally, what do you go through when you leave that show? And I'm sure you're glad that you got paid for 38 episodes as a series regular, but in the same thing, and you're glad because you're going to get work. But is there a mental letdown because it's like you're leaving? It's like to me, it'd be like leaving college. I was talking to this young girl who went to my school, and she was all excited to get in the business world, but she still missed college. I mean, what is it like for an actor when you're sitting there and you're coming from as a regular on a show where everyone knows your name? And then it's like, and when you're an episodic as a guest star, some people can be pricks, some people can be great. It's like you're always like the guy on the outside, like the kid who transferred from another school into like your junior school. So what was it like for you emotionally when Banshee ended? Because that was the first time you were an actual real regular on a show, right?
Yeah. I mean, from beginning to end, yeah. I cried. I didn't cry when Sopranos ended. I mean, it ended. I was not, as I said, I was part of the fabric up till the end and very much in the last few years. But Banshee, I was there from the beginning. It's funny you referenced college. We had a girl on the show, Lily Simmons, who played Rebecca. She came in season 1, 18 years old, and left 4 years later. We did 4 seasons at 22, having never gone to college. We always called Banshee University because that was her 4 years of college. And she, learned acting. She learned how to live on her own because we were on location. And I'll tell you, Steve, there's nothing better than being on location because you can get lost in the role. You can get lost because, when you come home at night, this is what I was telling us about Sopranos. I still came home at night. We could have an incredible shoot. I still came home at night. Banshee, I'm going back to an apartment building where almost everybody in the cast is living. So it's like we're all going back. We're all married. We got significant others, but we're all alone. So we like, hey, we're going to meet at Matt's apartment. I'll bring a bottle of wine. We all come back. Maybe we watch a movie, play a game. And then, we get up and we're also like fight sequences, beating the crap out of each other, sex scenes, rehearsing sex scenes. I mean, like having to work with a coordinator to kind of figure out what's going to work. So we had a ton of, physical stuff on that show. And I got super, super close. And I'm going to tell you right now, that show was produced by HBO for Cinemax. And because everybody's like, oh, it's a Cinemax show. I'm like, well, actually, my check's cut by HBO. And they've been rerunning it recently on the main channel, just airing episodes randomly, and I forgot how good it is. It is excellent. When people say to me, "Oh, I'm done with Sopranos. I binged it twice. What's next?" I'm like, Banshee. If Quentin Tarantino made a TV show, it's Banshee. Quentin loved the show, and we had many celebrities. Samuel L. Jackson loved the show. Michael Key from Key and Peele loved the show. They would Henry Winkler loved it. They would come to the openings and the things in L.A. It was this cult following, and I said we never did a lot of press. I said our marketing campaign was one guy in every office in America going, "Have you guys seen Banshee? It's the best show on TV." And that was it. And then their whole office would watch it, and then they'd say like, "We spread the word. We spread the word." So to this day, it's got this incredible dark cult following. It's an excellent show. The writer, the showrunner, Jonathan Tropper, who has a new show coming up on Apple TV, which I'll put a pitch for. Your Friends and Neighbors coming up. It starts early April. John Hamm is the star. Jonathan Tropper created Banshee. Said, I could not make that show now. I don't think they wouldn't greenlight it. It's so dark. We have white supremacists. We've got rape. We've got this, that. I mean, tons of Native American storylines. He says, I just don't think the world would want it anymore. We're all too delicate. He said, every group is represented awfully on our show. I mean, cops, robbers, everybody was bad. But I love that show. It really was, we all said we've got scars from fights, sequences that we did where we got hurt. So it really was one of those special runs. So in a weird way, you're saying, oh, Sopranos. I said, yeah, but then I got to do Banshee, which was its own gift to me. Again, like, how can I top Sopranos? Oh, my God, 4 years on location with this amazing group of people.
Now, you're a guy who's doing a lot of dramas. That's what you do. This Banshee. How do you end up as the Satan in this show? I mean, it's like, because it's not like, people are looking at you, and people who know you probably have to go, he's a funny guy. But people who look at you, they look at you as a serious person. So how did that role come up, playing Satan?
Listen, I always tell people the best acting you'll see all year is me being serious. And I've made a lot of money doing it. So it's like, that's what I said, it's the Juilliard thing. I was musical theater, I was comedy, and then all of a sudden I got pulled in one direction, and it ran that way for 30 years. And somewhere along the way I just lost the comedy thing, because it's like I was doing, I had an improv group with Rainn Wilson years ago, and here in New York with all of these people that went on to kind of do great work in LA and New York. And, I really was trying to kind of stay in the comedy world as long as I could. And out of nowhere, this Adult Swim thing comes up. I auditioned, I think, a couple times, and they were looking for a Satan that was not like the traditional Satan, kind of more of like Gene Simmons, like a retired metal rocker who now has to run hell. And I got cast. I really did. I had to do a ton of improv, did a lot of stuff with the producers, writers, and then I got cast, and then I had to wait. It took us almost a year to get that show off the ground. And then once it took off, I just loved it. It was like sorbet, Steve. I always say that was like sorbet because, as you said, here I am doing all the heavy lifting up in New York, and then I get to hit between courses. I clean the palate with a little bit of sorbet, a little acting stuff, because the episodes were short. It's Adult Swim. The budget was never huge. The show is crazy. We are doing the craziest effects, silliness, blood stuff, blood and guts. It's ridiculous. And that was an absolute joy. And I've stayed friends with those guys. We are now trying to keep our own comedy, production company going, for film. Not a lot of interest in TV, but mostly trying, because everyone's afraid to make comedy, man. You know this more. The landscape for you guys these days, stand up, writers, screen. It's really hard. Everyone's like, oh man, the C word, don't want to make a comedy. Nobody's got a sense of humor anymore. And I'm like, oh, forget it. I'd rather die on the vine here, on the cross, than try to keep making like insipid in indie films. I'm like, I really feel like there's still a place for like small indie comedies,
Well, you directed a movie. Tell me about A Town Called Purgatory. Yeah,
so basically what happened is I got a chance to direct on Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, the Adult Swim show, right near the end. And I got the bug. I was like, oh my God, I love this. This was great. I really enjoyed this. And I'm good with actors. I've been around actors my whole life. I know how to talk to them. I know how to kind of keep things light, give the right kind of direction that would get the right kind of performance. So I did that, and then I did a couple of shorts, award-winning shorts, one of them called Goodhead, which was with the Adult Swim people, won tons of awards all over the country, all over the world. And then I did a serious film called Matthew, about a high school shooter, and that also won awards and did really, really well. In fact, we're in development right now to make the feature. But A Town Called Purgatory came about because we were, again, comedy. We were going to shoot a comedy. And COVID happened. And so we had to shelf the movie. It was shooting over in Europe, a little bit of a Euro road trip movie comedy with 4 guys from America. So we have to shelf that. And in the meantime, one of the producers comes to me with this script, very small cast, Western. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great. Like, there's 7 people in the movie. We might be able to shoot this during COVID. So we had a producer over in Europe that we were working with on the comedy. And I said, listen, we're obviously going to shelf that until COVID, but we also have this really small script, all set in a Western town. So we're going to go look in Arizona, Texas, try to find one of these like abandoned old West towns and shoot this horror movie, horror Western. And he goes, oh, no. I have the old West town here in Austria. I said, what? He goes, I'll call you in 30 minutes. He FaceTimes me. There's this old abandoned old West town. It was built as like an amusement park in outside of Vienna that people could bring their kids. And there was like, you'd come and there'd be like cowboys on horses that would shoot at each other. There was a little train that went around the town that would get robbed. You'd go to the saloon for lunch. A bar fight would break out with stuntmen falling off of railings. So this went on for years. Well, it went bankrupt. They closed it. So it's just sitting there. So he says, come here and make your movie. I'll get tax incentives, the whole thing. So, yeah, we went over, raised all private equity in the States, very, group of no names, a lot of just good, hardworking actors from the East Coast, some international stars, and we just went over there and made this thing. It it was insane. It was during COVID. They had the coldest spring they've ever had in Austria, so we had snow, which we didn't want and need at all, because I had people. We didn't dress them. We didn't get costumes to be freezing cold and snowing every day. So it was a nightmare. We made a horror movie, and a horror movie broke out. We had an earthquake. It was insane, but we got it done. I had some artistic differences when we got back. I did kind of give the movie back to the producers. Went as far as I could with it, kept my name on it. It was a group effort, but I in the end was not kind of thrilled with where the direction they wanted to go, but that's movie making. So it's out there, it's finished. I think they're probably going to distribute it. It's just finishing a festival run right now, but it'll be probably streaming in 2025 at some point. So I'm sure it'll be, hopefully, like right around Halloween. That'll be a great time for it to come out.
Now, you've had a very successful career. You know, you said you're a kid from Detroit. You never thought your life would take you this way. But when you look back, what are a few things that make you really proud? Like, you know, I like to ask this question to a lot of actors and musicians. Some way, like Uncle Cracker, I interviewed. He said he was, for being a dumbass, he paid his kids way through college. Because another actor said that being an actor got to pay their kids way through college. What for you? What are some things that make you really proud? Because, you know, you've done what so many people try to do, but you've been successful at it. So, I mean, what are some things that make you proud? Because usually actors I talk to, and you'll probably agree with this, like you actors would bitch that their pilot didn't get picked up. I'm like, yeah, but you got a pilot. You know, like so many people wish they could get that. But what are some things that have made you proud in your career?
That's funny you say that. I said, you're nobody until you have something to bitch about. You know, I had a friend, he got replaced. He did the off-walk Broadway production. They went to Broadway. They met with a star. And he bitched and moaned. I took him out to lunch. I said, Rich, you got a great story, and you're nobody until you have stories like that, right? I mean, all the good actors have, you know, famous people have stories about getting fired, getting replaced, getting screwed over by their manager, losing all their money. I said, that's, at the end of your life, you're going to have great, hopefully if you've got a bunch of stories like this, you've had a great career. Going all the way back to your question about, like, did I think I'd made it with the soap, with Sopranos? As you'll notice, I keep avoiding it because I don't feel right now. I mean, I've made a living. But I think that's probably, like, the thing I'm proudest of is longevity. I preach that to kids, to students when I talk. I said, if you want to get the key to the city, if you want the key to being a star, I don't have it. If you want the little nugget that's going to make you famous or this, I said, I can tell you what I did to survive 40 years in the business. I did everything. I did years, even in the middle of everything we were just talking about. There's a stretch, Steve, where I'm on TV constantly shilling every fucking product you can think of. I did Bud Light commercials. I was the Flonase guy for 3 years. I was the Campbell's soup chef for 5 years. In the middle of doing Sopranos, I'm running off to shoot, like, with the chef's hat, almost Chef Boyardee kind of stuff, you know. They were going to put my face on every can of Campbell's soup. We were negotiating that contract at one point. And I'm like, I think I'd be over. I'd be Flo from Progressive. I just, like, you got to pay me millions if I'm going to be like, Campbell's soup, you know. Good. But I did it all. I've done, you know, I've really kind of never said no to much. But I am proudest, I say that I think that when I talk about the business, I always talk about, like, a lot of stars, a lot of big names up there. To find the middle class, it's about that thin. And then you got all these people struggling, working really hard, taking the acting classes, waiting tables, trying to wait for that break. But I said, this little group in the middle are my friends. And we've all suffered. We've all suffered through making this life choice. And the older I get it, I'm like, it's a terrible life choice. It is a great life. I remember Jeff Bridges saying that when he won one of his Oscars, and he just said, you know, this is a great life. And thank you to my father for talking to him. I'm like, yeah. When you start with that, you know, with his dad, and he's had a great career, it is a great career. You know, it is a great way to make a living. My kids are just figuring it out now. For years, I think they thought I was everything they saw. Like, oh, you're a construction worker. Oh, you're a doctor. Oh, you're a cop. You're a cop, Dad? Where are you a cop? You know. So now that they're older, all three of my kids are in college. They all realize I'm a joke, and that I am an actor, and that I basically, in their minds, I didn't work for a living. And I said, I said, the hardest job you'll ever have is unemployment. I promise you. It's the worst job ever. Because I said, everyone's like, oh, you're not doing anything. I'm like, are you kidding? The stress of unemployment will kill you. And I said, but really, this house, this falling apart house in suburban New Jersey, my leaves that are not all raked up from the fall, my beat up 2 cars in front of the house, I am so proud of that. The middle class existence that I have carved, a Detroit, Midwest type existence that I have carved out of a career, out of an acting career, I am incredibly proud of. And my kids, I mean, honest to God, I've kept a lot from them in like the years that were lean. I'm like, just keep studying, do your homework. We're going to go to the Jersey Shore, like keep the no big vacation this year. We'll just hit the beach. And, they've loved their life here where they've grown up and got great friends and all that stuff. So of all the stuff, I mean, that, and like I said, I've been able to kind of, because I feel like I've always wanted to be, when I hear these interviews, Steve, and I'm sure you've asked these questions like, so how do you pick and choose a role? I'm like, how do I pick and choose a role? What day does it start? Let me check my schedule. I mean, I'm not even asking about the pay anymore because the pay is atrocious. Ever since the contract that was supposed to get us all sorts of money, I'm back to getting offers for scale. I'm like, I cannot go back. I can't go backwards. So maybe I'm also proud of that there are certain moments in the last 5 years where I've said, I can't go backwards. If I got to die on the vine, I'll die. But I'm like, I'm not. We've made too much progress, and I feel like I've got worth. And the crazy thing is, I'm sure many actors feel this way. You're at your height the older you get. Like, so many of these beautiful, amazing older actresses that nobody's writing scripts for are at the height of their abilities. The more information you have emotionally, the longer you live, the better actor you are. Like, I was faking love in my 20s on stage, on camera. I had no idea what love was, what I was talking about. Now you talk about love, there is 50 different ranges of emotion that might come out of me depending on what we're talking about. And so it kills me when I'm not working now because I want to be in front of the camera or on the stage all the time. Either making people laugh and having fun, because God knows we need that so much right now, or giving me a chance to just run with these roles. The thing is also, Stephen, you can kind of see this with, again, I'm sure with some of your interviews, if you're not a star, and I mean when I was talking about the people up here by this age, I'll just say I'm 50-something, soon to be something else. These days, there's so many people not working that the kind of roles that I was going for before, or were offered to me, as you said, getting offers, are going to people that were on sitcoms for 7 years, that were a movie star up till 5 years ago, and will slum it down guesting on a TV show for 2 episodes. So the compression, as we talk about it now, of all the things in the business, the compression downwards, and then you throw in, that you put in that same compression for women, with age and everything, it gets even hard. Most of my actress friends, I'm like, I want to write scripts for them. They're amazing, and the phone's not ringing at all,
Well, you know what? This has been great, man. I'm glad we got to do this. Now, what's coming up for you? You got any shows coming up on the horizon?
So, so Jonathan Tropper, as I said, who created Banshee. Again, I'll say it again. If you get a chance, go check that out. I think it's on Hulu and it's on HBO Max. Has a new show on Apple TV called Your Friends and Neighbors, starring John Hamm. And I did a few episodes of that. Season 1 will start airing in April. It's already been picked up for a season 2. So we'll be shooting that later this year. I've got 3 directing projects coming up. I don't know if they'll all happen in 2025. One of them is a serious passion project. The comedy that I was supposed to shoot before COVID. It's been sitting on the sidelines for 5 years, so that is set for the fall. But yeah, I'm back to 2025 wide open. And then really, in fact, as a Jersey guy, you'll love this. We have a horror movie that's in development. I think the script has gone out over the holidays to some stars, called Off Season. It's all set in the off season at the Jersey Shore. Kind of a horror movie. A female mystery writer goes down there to write her next novel, and all sorts of awful things start happening to her. And I'm sure you've been to the beach in the off season. It is. There's nobody there.
I have friends live in Avalon and Stone Harbor. I've been down there. And if you need a crazy guy with a lazy eye for that movie, right here. So social media. You're on Facebook. You're on Instagram too, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's
everything is the great thing with my dumb Italian name, my proud Italian name, is that no one has it. So everything I do, social media, email, everything is my name. So I'm Matt Servitto on Instagram, Matt Servitto on Facebook, X. I'm trying to think. probably going to move over to a couple of the new ones that are the threads and some of the new stuff that's cropping up. But yeah, I'm all over it, and because I'm always still promoting things, just like you. I mean, we're all kind of looking to get our voices heard in a time when everybody wants eyeballs and everybody wants to be heard, right?
So people, go check out Matt. Go to IMDb. Go watch Banshee. Go watch it. He'll get some residuals too. Go watch all this stuff. Just scroll down IMDb. He has over 100 credits. That's when I always know it's a great actor, when they have over 100 credits. So that's longevity. It's not like, unless some actors have had like 5 series in a row, then they only have like 18 credits. But it's the thing. But go check him out. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 1,025 episodes. If you're on YouTube, look up my new show, Coop's Comedy Corner. We've had some great guests. Just some Stuart Pankins coming up, just some great comedians. I had my friends from Homicide, Reed Diamond and Kyle Sikora on there. We talk shop. Go check that out.
Tell Reed I said hi. Tell Reed Matt Servitto says hi.
I will. And also people go check out the Coop Tank on YouTube. That's my business show. I talk to a lot of local Philadelphia. I have a panel of Philadelphia and New Jersey business leaders that we talk about insights and networking, all that good stuff. And yeah, follow me on Twitter at Cooper Talk. Blue Sky at Cooper Talk, Instagram at Cooper Talk 1, and email me at cooper@coopertalk.net. I'm Steve Cooper, only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next time.